are is they're phosphate accumulating organisms. So that's their little acronym, and it's easiest to remember as the POWs. They store orthophosphate in excess of their growth requirements. So, sort of like me, I eat more donuts than I really need for my growth requirement, or just, I don't know. But basically, they're taking in more orthophosphate than what they really need. So they're kind of hoarding it up, and given the right conditions. And that's it. They need favorable operational conditions. You got to have an anaerobic selector. So that means A, B, and C have to be operated anaerobic. Now we're talking no DO, no nitrate, anaerobic, and just basically running those mixers up there to keep everything in suspension. They have complex metabolisms, and we're going to go, yeah, I knew I screwed up. That one's going to go. I knew I was missing one. That sentence is supposed to disappear. Okay. The facultative heterotrophs, they use organic carbon for growth, so they're going to be using VOD coming in. So they are carbonaceous demand is going to be satisfied. They use oxygen for energy generation. So to make energy, they need oxygen. But they can also grow in the absence of oxygen. And they need an anaerobic zone. So they need an aerobic zone, but they also need an anaerobic zone. So they're facultative. They are going to do one thing in one zone, the aerobic zone, and then when they get to the anaerobic zone, they'll do another thing. We'll get into that. So the anaerobic zone, that's basically provided by the influent to the secondary system in cells A, B, and C. Your primary effluent's coming in there. It should really have no DO in it. It's got carbon in it. There's going to be an oxygen demand if there was any oxygen in that anaerobic selector. You got your RAS coming in, side streams coming in. A, B, and C should be anaerobic. So you're going to have no electron acceptors present, and you're going to have no dissolved oxygen and no nitrates in that anaerobic zone. In that anaerobic zone, A, B, and C, at the beginning of the aeration tank, the POWs are not going to grow. But what they're going to do is they're going to convert organics to polyhydroxyalkanoates, PHAs. And they're going to consume energy. So in that anaerobic zone, they're consuming energy. And when they consume energy, they're breaking down their little energy batteries and releasing phosphorus. They're basically breaking high energy phosphorus bonds as their energy source, okay? And they release phosphorus in the wastewater. They also will break down glycogen. That's part of their cellular material. Now, this is a lot of crazy stuff going on here. Bottom line, they're in an anaerobic zone. They're stressed. They are stressed out, and they are shedding phosphorus, okay? They're not growing. And you think, but this doesn't sound good. Why are these, you put these bugs through stress, they're dropping off phosphorus, they're making phosphorus. That doesn't sound like a good thing. Well, you're at the head of your aeration tank. They're now going to go into the aerobic zone, and as soon as they get out of C, the selectors go cell C and work their ways through D and G, D through G, because it's all plug flow. It's aerobic in here. All of a sudden, now they're going to start growing, and they start taking off and oxidizing the stored PHAs for energy. And they're going to start using the DO as an electron acceptor. Basically, what that's saying is they're recharging their batteries because of the DO in there. And while they're recharging their batteries, they're taking back the phosphorus. So they're going to rebuild their high phosphorus energy bonds. They're now taking back all that phosphorus that they dropped off, but they're also going to take up excess phosphorus that happens to be around them that came in that influent, okay? Which we said, like, your influent has like maybe 4 milligrams per liter. And they go nuts, and they end up taking up 125% of phosphorus that's available. So that includes what was released in the anaerobic zone plus what came into the plant. So if you want to put something down on this, on your thing, it's luxury uptake. They call it luxury uptake of phosphorus. You've got a bonus. So the first one, when you're in the anaerobic zone, they're stressed out and they're dropping it off. And it was sort of like they were getting themselves ready for a marathon or something. And then the second cell, they just take off like mad. And they start bringing up the phosphorus. So your net result, you're going to have a low effluent phosphorus. So you guys have like an influent of like a 4, and you're dropping down to a 0.3. All that phosphorus went somewhere, got tied into those microorganisms. So if you take the zone, you provide them the zone, you build the field, they'll come, they'll play, and you get rid of the phosphorus for you. So, they're all, all these bugs have the phosphorus. How's it removed from the system? It's removed via the waste-activated sludge. Okay? Now, your phosphorus content of your Ys, if you're not using enhanced biological phosphorus removal, it's only 1.5 to 2% of the volatiles in your Ys. But with enhanced biological phosphorus removal, you're getting up to 5% of your volatile content of your Ys is phosphorus. These guys are what we call fat pea bugs. They're stuffed with phosphorus. All right. So that's what you're doing. You're building the fat pea bugs. All right. Then we got one of the things. This is kind of nice to know. I don't think it's gonna be a big issue for you guys out here. You gotta make sure you get sufficient cations for your phosphorus removal. And negatively charged phosphorus cannot transport out of the cell. The cations neutralize charges, allowing transport. And typical domestic wastewater have sufficient concentrations. This is another thing that you may read about in any articles on this. If you read the WEF articles, this is one of the things there. But again, you guys got a really solid, no pun intended, influent coming in here. It's pretty diverse. It's a good mix, good soup coming in. So here's your summary slide. This is what you need for enhanced biological phosphorus removal. You notice you got your first selector there. It's just got a mixer in it, and that's basically your anaerobic zone. And then you have your aerobic zone. You got all the little oxygens in there, and you got the little phosphorus-absorbing organism bugs in there. So what you need, first of all, is you need readily biodegradable BOD, COD, which present the volatile fatty acids that they need. And that you can also get from your side streams out here from your sludge holding tanks. I know you guys that worked on the pilot plant, I think we were cognizant of using it as well. And then you got a relatively high BOD to your total phosphorus ratio, about greater than 20 to 1. Obviously a correctly sized anaerobic selector. There's a reason why A, B, C, D, and E are sized the way they are. A, B, C can either be used as anaerobic selectors or anoxic selectors. And then D and E, they can also, those selectors are small as well, relatively, and they can be used as anoxic selectors or aerobic selectors, okay? But A, B, and C are your smallest ones. And they found by having a very tight, small selector, and having it highly loaded with the BOD coming in to your total phosphorus with these microorganisms, it optimizes the treatment process. It optimizes the environment for these microorganisms to perform. And the other thing you need is sufficient cations. So what you're going to see is you see your volatile fatty acids are taken off. You have bacteria that are going into your anaerobic selector. There's a lot of phosphorus in there. And a lot of that phosphorus not only what came in, but what these guys have released. The microorganisms have released phosphorus because they're stressed out in that first cell, or the first three, A, B, and C, those selectors. As it goes out into the aerobic zone, there's a lot of oxygen in there, and you'll notice that those phosphorus, the POWs, the phosphorus-absorbing organisms, the POWs, that's what those squiggly looking things are, they got P locked into them now. They're pulling in the phosphorus. So they're pulling it into them. And your end result that you have bacteria coming out of there that are phosphorus enriched. Like I said, they have 125%, not only of what was released, but what came in the influence. So you got fat P bugs. So here's another way of looking at it, what's happening. If you look at the tan anaerobic zone and you got the green aerobic zone, in the tan anaerobic zone you get volatile fatty acid uptake. You have the return sludge coming in, your influent coming in there. And then you have the phosphorus release is also occurring there. Then in the aerobic part of it, there you have the phosphorus uptake and the polyhydroxyl, I'm not going to get it right, but the PHB oxidation. All right. So what's happening there now is you've got the phosphorus locked into the bugs, and then ultimately everything's locked into the waste sludge. So that's the phosphorus removal process at this plant. One of the things that could screw things up for your capture of the phosphorus would be the conditions under which the phosphorus is stored, because you can get a re-release of the phosphorus if they're put into an anaerobic condition. They get stressed, they're going to all of a sudden drop it all off again. Okay? So if you monitor side streams, if the bugs aren't getting produced quickly and they're sitting too long, you will have the phosphorus really released in like supernatant or side streams coming from solids processing.
Just a thought, and I don't know if you can answer the question, I know I can't answer the question. If you waste to a DAF unit, which is strictly aerobic,
Yep.
suppose we had a gravity belt thickener, would we get a re-release of phosphorus if we were trying to thicken it with a gravity belt thickener in lieu of a DAF, or would it make no difference whatsoever?
It depends how quickly the sludge gets processed, because you can waste directly to a GBT.
GBT, yeah.
But if you were storing it for a long period of time.
Before you did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that might create the issue.
Right, because then it would come out and filtrate.
Okay.
But I can find out other plants that may have that
Just
configuration.
curious.
No, it's good.
We're
That's a
staying-
very good point.
We're
right
staying
there.
with DAFs
Yeah.
here, and for various reasons, but in our case, it should prevent the re-release of phosphorus from our wasting operations.
And the thing is, how much would get released and how long are you anaerobic too?
Yeah.
But you're right. That's the whole thing. If you, for some reason, the sludge, the waste sludge, which is now fat pea bugs in there, if it's put into an anaerobic condition, they can start shedding off the phosphorus as they use in their energy stores. Okay, they're like basically discharging their batteries. All right, so that's something to keep in mind. Other plants that have problems with this, it all depends on how the sludge, the waste sludge is managed before it ultimately gets thickened, dewatered, and obviously here burned or incinerated. So that's a good thing, yeah, keep in mind. Other situations, this is totally a different area, but like sulfur compounds for odorous compounds taken up in odor control, where it's scrubbed and captured into a liquid where it's oxidized. But that oxidized sulfur compound from hydrogen sulfide turns up to a sulfate. If those side streams from like scrubbers from odor control get into an anaerobic condition, you can never re-release them. You end up having hydrogen sulfide re-released again. So it's once you capture something, either in a in case of microorganism or by oxidizing it, you got to make sure you don't put it into a situation where it's anaerobic, because you get a re-release of what you've worked so hard to get to begin with. Okay, give you guys a 10-minute break. It's a lot of stuff. There you go. Yep.
Well, you have to. You can't afford to be spending that kind of money.
Blood zest.
Jimmy has a lot of money. He can spend money that we haven't even thought about. Right, Jim? Huh? What? You can spend money that we haven't even thought about yet.
Guys loaded.
Loaded.
I can dream too. Yeah.
Loaded. Why you work is beyond me.
I thought I got also I got Jeremiah's in.
Get you free dinner. Loaded.
Why is loaded?
More money than
Some kind of conspiracy.
Who's donating to Michael Jackson?
Almost a couple. We started now. Here we go.
Someone's doing a big brother watching you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so this thing, I'm not
You
good
have to
at
place you
this.
up a card.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, he's on a roll.
Start with
You don't want to get audited.
Yeah. Yeah. You were 16 pancakes.
I'm listening. 5 minutes. I want to turn it.
Fires away.
Okay, guys.
Okay, roll.
picking up now. As you recall, we started out the modified Lidzak Ettinger process tank configurations. This back in October when we started up the North Battery. And in that case, you have cells A, B, and C in an anoxic mode, and D through G were aerobic. You note on top you got internal recycle that's returned back to cell A to meet the incoming primary effluent in the RAS. And you'll note that that's 3.3, 3.2 something typically would be the max forward flow that you can do if you had the internal recycle pumps all the way cranked up. That's one of your operational controls. As we mentioned earlier, you wouldn't want to internal recycle too much. If you're going too quickly, you get a lot of high DO. You could be introducing DO into an anoxic selector. But you also want to make sure you're internally recycling enough so that you're getting the highly nitrified mixed liquor into that zone and optimizing the nitrate removal as much as possible to drive the denitrification and the release of the nitrogen gas up to the atmosphere. So there's a little bit of a balancing act there to find out what the optimal setting is going to end up being on that for the speed. So as we said, we started out in October in the MLE process, but as winter came in, it became more difficult to maintain nitrification, and we ultimately ended up over in the AO mode. Quick review, MLE process, zones A, B, and C are going to be in anoxic mode to achieve denitrification by internally recycling the highly nitrified mixed liquors from the end of the aeration zone, which would be from right after G. Swing zones D and E will be operated in the aerobic mode with diffused aeration end. This is maximizing the amount of aerobic zones you have by having those swing zones on. The mixers will be off. As you recall, the hyperbolic mixers shouldn't be operated when the diffused air is on. So anyways, this mode will not achieve biological phosphorus removal and can't be operated between April 1st and October 31st. It could be operated in the winter months to achieve year-round nitrification and denitrification, which is a relatively stable mode of operation and will result in operational cost savings due to savings in alkalinity and oxygen. And the anoxic selector will also achieve a better settling sludge as compared to a conventional activated sludge system. Basically, for the MLE process, you want to maintain a design SRT of around 10 days. You maintain your oxic zones in an aerobic mode, basically around 2 milligrams per liter DO, and maintain your anoxic zones in an anoxic mode where you have nitrate present and, as I said, less than 0.5 milligrams per liter DO. You want to maintain your internal recycle rate to optimize denitrification. You don't want it too high if you're going to be introducing DO. If you start introducing DO, the two things you're going to immediately look at is, do I have too high of a DO at the end of my aeration tank that I'm returning? I can taper that off. Or is there a precipitation event going on and I've got diluted, very cold, but highly oxygenated primary effluent coming in that could be causing a problem. You want to maintain adequate alkalinity. In this case, we like to see above 60 milligrams per liter, and a pH around 7.2 is optimal, but like I said, 7, that's good too. You start chasing a higher pH, you're paying for it in chemical costs. You supplement your alkalinity with the incinerator scrubber waste, and you have sodium hydroxide to the secondary MLSS as a backup. You have nitrification is more sensitive to the two process mechanisms, so you gotta be careful not to lose nitrification through either not maintaining the SRT or not maintaining a long enough SRT or microorganism population during cold weather. So that was the MLE process, quick overview on that. Here's the AO process, which you are currently using. This is a very simple graphic of it, and then here's the A²O process. In the AO process, basically we have your primary effluent and your RAS going into an anaerobic zone, followed by an oxic stage, which is your aerobic. They use the word oxic. That's where you get the O from. And then it goes through to your final settling tanks. The A²O process it takes one step further. You've added another A to it. You basically have an anaxic stage following your anaerobic stage, and you now have internal recycle being used. So if you were operating the AO process at this plant, as you currently are, you would have A, B, and C in the anaerobic mode, and then D, E, F, and G are aerobic, and there's no internal recycle occurring. All right? And this is the one that's going to help you get your phosphorus removal. As Paul said, you're getting 0.3 on your effluents. This is really good. You also get a well-settling sludge because of the anaerobic sludge. This type of sludge is a well-settling sludge typically. So zones A, B, and C are going to be anaerobic zones, and then they'll be followed after that by the aerobic zones of D, E, F, and G. No internal recycle pump will be used. No invent mixers on in D and E because they're going to be aerobic, just using diffusers in there. And this is where you're going to get your biological phosphorus removal, which is your AO process. And you have to have a large carbonation, large aerobic volume. That's why you have D through G aerobic, so that you can get the carbonaceous VOD removal and nitrification of colder ones. That's going to be more like when you're running, also when you're running the MLE process as well. Okay. You don't have denitrification accomplished in the AO process, and since phosphorus removal is not required in winter months, the use of the anaerobic selectors for phosphorus removal is not required. However, the anaerobic selector will achieve a better settling sludge in the final settling tanks as compared to a conventional activated sludge system. And here's the A squared O process. It's basically a combination of the AO and the MLE process. If you take the two of them, marry them together, that's kind of what the A squared O process is. You're kind of taking the best of both, and you're going to be getting not only phosphorus removal, but you'll be getting the nitrogen removal as well. In this tank configuration, A, B, and C will be operated in the anaerobic mode, but now you're going to operate D and E in an anaxic mode, and you'll close the valve at the end, and you'll have your internal recycle now coming into the D cell, okay? And then only F and G will be in aerobic mode, okay? So basically, primary effluent RAS, enter into the anaerobic zones of A, B, and C. Internal recycle from the tail end of the aerobic zone goes to the head of the anaxic zone, basically in D, and followed by E. And so with D and E, the swing zones will not have diffused aeration, they'll have just the mixers in. And basically primary effluent is introduced into zone A through 2 24-inch effluent gates per tank. The A squared O process, return activated sludge is also introduced into zone A at a rate of about 6.5% of primary influent flow. A, B, and C represent only about 16% of the total reactor volume. They're pretty small. And the design of the anaerobic zone results into a food microorganism ratio of 2.4 in zone A, 1.2 in zone B, and 0.51 in zone C. This is why you have small selector cells, is to control the food microorganism ratio. So you're making small boxes for your food microorganism ratio. Obviously, as you progress from A to B to C, the food diminishes because it's being consumed rapidly. Alright, the organisms cultivated in the anaerobic zone are capable of taking up phosphorus at a level beyond requirements for growth, as we've discussed before. And as such, the solids generated have about 2.5 to 4% more phosphorus than from conventional treatment. They're basically stuffing themselves, the cows, the phosphorus absorbing organisms. As the flow passes to the anaxic zones D and E, internal recycle of mixed liquor from the tail end of the aeration stage is introduced to the anaxic stage. There you have biological denitrification to reduce the nitrate nitrogen. The nitrogen gas pops off to the atmosphere, 80% nitrogen. And let's see, the nitrate is your source of oxygen to the facultative heterotrophs in there. And most of this, you only get the 5, you got 4 or 5 horsepower inlet mixers to provide the mixing. Internal recycle flow can be set up as high as 320% of the average primary effluent flow. About how much you internally recycle, gotta keep an eye on it. And then giving you an active volume of 0.66 million gallons in total recycle capacity, whereas an IR of almost 4 times the average flow. It's expected the effluent nitrogen of less than 2 kilograms per liter can be achieved. Alright, then you got specific denitrification rates, a function of temperature. That's going to be your limiting factor during the winter months. Temperature starts dropping, you start losing it. And as we saw this past winter, it was pretty cold. You know, this plant lost it. There's other plants I've been involved with. Some in Connecticut, same thing. You get into brutal cold weather, and it's very difficult to maintain nitrification. The other things, your variation of your internal recycle rates provide control over the fraction of nitrate removed. Then you have, however, a total recycle rate of greater than 4 times the average flow results in a significantly diminishing return. That's why your internal recycle is not going to go that high. We're only looking at the max of, I think, 3.3, 3.2% of your flow coming in. When they first started designing these plants, I actually saw one plant that could internally recycle 6 times the flow, but it was overkill, and you never get to that point on a lot of these plants. It just doesn't do it. So they're now finding that less than 4 times your effluent flow coming in is the norm. All right, general operational considerations. More knowledgeable operator. You guys already pretty much got this under your belt. So now it's variations on a theme that you're operating out there. And the other thing is, you know, from what you've learned from the operation of the pilot plant is definitely carried over. Proper operator training. We've been through a lot of training classes, laboratory facilities, and you have the basic principles are similar for all the ENR processes as you're starting to see. Whether you're nitrifying, denitrifying, you're doing phosphorus removal. This is how you set up the stage based on your tank configuration, and then you have your specific SRT and you know, other process adjustments like the IR and controlling side streams in that. So SRT for the AO and MLE is 10 days, and the A squared O is 8 days. This is an aerobic SRT, so this is the solids retention time measured based on the aerobic volumes. Obviously,
Excuse me, is that for all 4 aeration tanks in service? The entire process being 4 aeration tanks?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
yeah. But then if you had, yeah, right, exactly. Then your oxytones, you want to make sure, like I said, I don't like to see less than 2 milligrams per liter of DO. However, when we're doing the blower testing, it was interesting because we had the cutoff at the very end. You know, your last 2 DO probes, I